Okay, guys, let's bring on The Rock, Nate Quarry. How's it going, man?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. So let's just start off by asking you about this UFC antitrust lawsuit. What's going on with it?
We're just on the battlefield. This is
Right.
going to be something that actually takes years to follow through with. So
Okay.
99% of the work is going to be done by the lawyers. We're really confident that the way that the UFC has run business has led to a monopolistic practice, and especially the fighters. They said from the very beginning, well, you're not employees, you're independent contractors.
Right.
Well, by strict definition of that, no, the fighters are definitely employees. And there's been recent lawsuits that have proven that. I think it was FedEx that was requiring their workers to wear a uniform, show up at certain times, blah, blah, blah. And the court said, no, these are employees. They're entitled to the rights that all employees have. When you're an independent contractor, that means you're your own businessman. You answer to yourself. People don't tell you when to work, where to work, who to work with, what uniform you have, associations you can have. No, that's a part of being your own businessman. And the UFC tells you where to work, when to work, who you're working with, and now most blatantly, what clothes you can wear. Here is your uniform. I've never heard of an independent contractor that can do something like that.
Right.
It's just
Right.
ridiculous. And then because the way the UFC does these things, when I started fighting for them, they told me flat out, we can't pay you very much, but you can have whatever sponsors you want. Then it was, well, you can't thank your sponsors. That was, well, we need to approve your sponsors. Then it was, well, you can't have any contradicting sponsors. Then it was, well, your sponsors have to pay us $50,000 a year for the privilege of sponsoring you. Then it was $100,000 a year.
Wow.
And now the UFC says, hey, all that stuff, no, you guys don't have any sponsors now other than what we tell you you can have, and it's Reebok. And then my favorite line out of all this is Dana saying, this is what's best for the sport, I understand. And not one of these gutless interviewers will ask him, how?
Right.
How is this what's best for the sport, Dana? I'm confused because I think having an unlimited number of sponsors with an unlimited budget, reaching out across the globe, advertising for your 500 to 600 fighters all over the place would be much better for the sport and your business than having one sponsor with a limited budget. Well, a dozen guys that are going to be the face of the Reebok brand, and the other 500 guys are sitting there with a thumb up their ass. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But then you have, of course, Dana White also saying that every dime of this deal goes to the fighters. They're not making a cent for it.
Right.
Well, really. So let's assume that Dana's never lied to us in the past, and we want this to be truthful. So we'll look at this and say, well, we know that you hired some people to distribute the money and do all these things, so that money isn't coming out of Sousa's pocket. That's coming out of the Reebok deal. So already the amount is reduced. Well, then we discovered that the numbers weren't making sense. Oh, well, some of that money is going to come to you in gear. So you're going to get gear, Reebok shirts, as part of your compensation. That's business number one. When you're a fighter, you don't accept gear for payment. I'd be more than happy to. I mean, damn, if I could send my mortgage company a box of shirts, I've got tons of them. I'd be more than happy to do so. I can't go down to the gas station and give them a shirt when I'm trying to fill up my gas tank.
Right.
Those companies only take money, and that's how fighters have always known things. But money is what pays the bills, and it's our belief is that there's actually a second deal with Reebok that directly pays the UFC, because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever that the UFC would tell Affliction or Tap Out, hey guys, we don't want your $5 million to advertise on the match. We're going to let Reebok take that space because they're going to pay the fighters. So we're losing $5 million a year while all this money is going to the fighters. Well, no, we know that's not the case. There's a second contract. So Dana can say, well, this deal is all about the fighters.
Right.
Well, he doesn't talk about the second, more lucrative deal that sells them the mat space, and they're cut off of all the shirts that are sold and all the gear and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous. If this really was concerned about the welfare of the fighters, and it was all about the fighters, and the UFC wasn't making a dime, then a simple solution to this would be let the fighters opt out of the Reebok deal. What difference would it make? Some of the fighters, I'm sure, especially now that Zuffa has crushed the sponsorships, because before it used to be any sponsor you could have, as I just ran through, and they could come in with $500 or $10,000 or $10 million, whatever it may be. But after the UFC started strangling the sponsors to where everybody had to pay the sponsorship tax, you went from sport companies wanting to sponsor fighters, even mom and pop guys that were just like, hell, I make sure this is my local boy. I want to feel like I'm helping him on his journey. I'm going to give him $1,000 to wear these shorts, or
Right.
$2,000 or whatsoever. Well, then they implement the sponsorship tax. Well, so their budget doesn't include it. Mom and pop wants to pay $2,000 to the fighter. Well, it doesn't include an extra $100,000 to pay Dana. So now that's washed out. So then you have 4 short sponsors or so: Tap Out, Venom, Hayabusa, stuff like that. And when you have 4 short sponsors and 500 guys, once again, you've got a limited budget, or then telling the fighters, yeah, sorry, we've already used our budget for the year, so we'll send you some shorts, or maybe $200. My buddy, one of my buddies who was sponsored by Dethroned 5 or 6 years ago, was paid by Dethroned $12,500 to wear Dethroned shorts in the fight. After the sponsorship taxes came into effect and all that, his last fight, Dethroned paid him $250.
Holy shit.
So the more money that the UFC is making, and it's blatant, you can see it. That's one of the things that drives me crazy the most, is when you hear Dana bragging about how much money he's making. Copies of UFC games. Cool, how much of that money went to the fighters?
Right.
Not a penny. Okay. So, and this is just the normal progression. This is for sports especially, but for every business out there. If you look at, like, the Screen Actors Guild, if that washed away tomorrow, you'd have guys coming out of the woodwork saying, I will work for free to be in this movie because I want to be with this director. And it just kills everybody out there, because that's why we have laws in place. That's why we have minimum wage, because somebody will come along that's starving and say, well, you don't need to pay me $9 an hour. I'll do it for $4. Well, damn, this guy's going to do it for $4. I got to do it for $3. We had to put these laws in place to protect us from big business. And the same thing with the NFL, the NBA, all that stuff. And the owners just astounds me. They're able to sway the public. Or you have an owner who's worth billions of dollars, who doesn't want to give his players or his fighters a raise, demonizes the players, saying, look at how greedy these guys are.
Right.
They're playing a game, for Christ's sake. And look at how much money he's making. I bet you would do that for half as much. To play a game, to live your dream? Can you believe how selfish these guys are? But if you raised your hand and said, you cleared $5 billion last year, how about you give $1 billion out? Why don't you reduce the price of pay-per-views? $5. Oh, well, shit, I can't do that. This is just business. It's just business. That's the market. Okay, so you want to demonize the players who have such an incredibly short window to provide the NFL guys. These guys may have played football for 12, 14 years for free. There's a 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 chance they're going to make it to the NFL, and when they do, their average career is 3.5 years long. And then you have the billionaire owners who have generationally owned the team, from their grandfather to the father to the son, worth billions of dollars, have never worked a day in their lives, then demonizing the players for actually wanting to be compensated for the money that they're making for the billionaire owner. It just blows me away. I tell every fighter, you have to fight for the love of this. And I think they love the sport that they're in. It's way too hard to do it. unless you love it. The odds are so low that you're going to be successful. You have to do it because you love it. And if you make money at the end, that is such a gift. That's such a blessing. But you have to treat it like a business, because if you don't, everyone around you is. Everyone around you is looking to get paid. And you have to take that small window and capitalize on it so you can feed your family, so your kids can go to college, so they can have the advantages you didn't. And I personally, I'm all for promoters and owners making money. But shouldn't the players be compensated as well? We have such a huge gap now between the rich and the poor in this country. And I don't know what the solution is. But what I do know is if my name was Walton and I was, or Walmart, Walmart Walton, if I was worth $40 billion, I'd give my workers a raise.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine. I'm pretty sure I could survive on $39 billion.
Right.
But that's just not the way that people think in this world. And it blows me away when you'll see really, really rich people giving to charity. Or if you watch the series The Men Who Built America, talks about Vanderbilt and all those ridiculously rich people that were richer than Bill Gates and Warren Buffett combined in comparative money, who, instead of giving their employees a raise or safer working conditions because they were dying in the mines, sent in the Pinkertons to shoot them up and let them know, well, if you don't get back to work, we're going to kill you. And then on their deathbeds, then they have libraries built in their name, and they give billions of dollars to charity. It's like they demonize these workers that are the ones that are actually making their wealth possible. Just treat us with respect. Give us a little bit of the due. We want you to be successful. We want to be in this together, that we're working for this. You're giving us the venue to put on fights, and we fight hard. Let us share a little bit in the profits as well, not 2 years after you retire having to start a Kickstarter campaign to get your hip changed out.
Right.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay, man, so looking back on your UFC career, would there be anything you'd change?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I was so naive coming into all of this. I had no idea, and I think that's where a lot of fighters get taken advantage of the Ali Act, which was started because promoters would just drop down blank pieces of paper in front of the boxers.
Right.
And say, sign this. We'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of you. And boxers and fighters, they're generally straightforward people. We're not used to lying and being two-faced, because who we are is right there for everyone to see. You see our personality every single fight. Am I the type of guy that's going to take a shot and keep fighting, or am I going to run away tapping as I do so? No, we're pretty clear. So when you have a promoter telling you, as I was told, don't worry, if this thing takes off, we'll take care of you, you have a tendency to believe it.
Right.
And then as the years go along, you realize, oh, just because I'm a man of my word doesn't mean he's a man of his word. Or our definition of taking care of you are two totally different things. So a big part of what I would have changed would have been looking at this like a business. When the UFC sat down their first real contract in front of me during the Ultimate Fighter, they said, hey, have the winners of the show under contract. We want to get all you guys under contract to make sure that we're able to have you fighting here in the UFC. I sat there. I was there in the room. Dana was there. Chris Lehman was there. Randy Couture was there. And that's when Dana gave me a line, don't worry, if this takes off, we'll take care of you.
Right.
All it would have taken right then and there was for myself or my manager, Randy, to say, sorry, buddy, I don't allow my guys to sign any contracts without a lawyer looking at them. That's all it would have taken.
Yeah.
Because that was the one time that we actually had power over the UFC. But we didn't know it. We were too naive. And Dana said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. I'm like, cool. Well, Dana's going to take care of me. It's all good.
Nice.
And again, I'm not specifically speaking about myself, because overall with my career, I'm generally pretty happy.
Yeah.
And Dana White, and I've said this a million times, surgery that I had, I went to him and said, man, I'm broken. I can't train. I can't fight. But at the same time, I couldn't afford to go to the doctor because I just fought for the world title in front of who knows how many people and got paid $10,000. I fought 4 times that year with 3 knockouts, one of those being a title shot, for $40,000. Take away 15% that went
Wow.
directly to Team Quest, and then 20%, 20 to 30% for taxes, all that kind of stuff. And you're living on $15,000, $20,000 a year. That makes it pretty hard at back surgery that you need. And then when I came back, I continued to fight and fought 6 times afterwards with a record of 4-2. So I feel like I kind of did my part there to repay them for getting me back in the cage. And it wasn't so altruistic that I was just a random guy. They decided to pay for the surgery. I was an investment as well. So, but long story short, I'm overly happy with my career, and especially where I came from, man. I grew up working in the fields. I worked in fast food. I worked in construction. I did all these jobs that I just absolutely hated until I found fighting in 13 years to see if I could really make a go of this, and then really lived poor. $10,000 a year for several years as I tried to make this happen with a baby, with a mortgage, trying to go. So, and seeing my father die at 62 with nothing to his name, nothing but debt and regret, I'm ridiculously happy where I'm at now. But I'm also one of the exceptions. I want to see my success to be more of the rule for the other fighters that are coming up. So when they get into the UFC, they know what's expected. When they decide I'm going to have this career in MMA, they know why I have these rights. If I do really well, I can bargain for my future. The promoter doesn't have all of the cards in the deck, that you have rights as well. That's what we're really fighting to do, and it just blows me away whenever I hear somebody, and even Joe Rogan said on his podcast, oh, these are just a few guys who are just bitter and upset about their career, trying to get something they didn't earn.
Right.
Like, really? So I'm bitter that I wasn't compensated correctly for the efforts that I put in, but it doesn't make me bitter. But would you say that Cung Lee is bitter? Vanderlei Silva is bitter? John Fitch is bitter? These are the guys that are not happy with their career? Or is it more that Cung Lee was slandered and libeled over a bullshit drug test, and then the UFC decided to make an example out of him, ruining business opportunities for him? And when it came out that their testing was completely flawed and total bullshit, what did they do? They called up Cung and said, we know you're guilty. You just need to admit it.
Oh,
And if
wow.
that was me, if I was the one that had made a mistake like that, I said this on The Ultimate Fighter. When you make a mistake, your apology should be louder than your accusation. Cung didn't even get the bonus for Fight of the Night that Bisping got. Bisping got his because he failed this bullshit drug test.
Really?
And instead of coming out and saying, here's your check, we're sorry, we're going to make sure that your name is cleared, Dana got him on the phone and said, I know you're guilty, you just need to admit it.
Wow.
And that's like me just randomly posting, Bill Cosby raped me. Now it's up to you to prove that he didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an accusation that ruins somebody's reputation. And once you've done something like that, the damage is very hard to come back from. He had people tweeting at him, you're such a phony, you're such a fake, how long have you been using, all this kind of stuff. I could see from that photo that you're guilty. And I talked to Cung, and he says, flat out, for the first time in my life, I actually trained. I had a diet. I worked with a conditioning coach. I never cared about those things. He was a small middleweight, so he never worried about it. But now this was a big fight in China, and he was the one that filled the entire auditorium there. And it was the usual. He was injured looking to go into this fight. His wife went into major life-threatening surgery when he had to fly to China and film The Ultimate Fighter and do all these things. And his thanks was not being approached. We feel that you may have failed this drug test. We're a little concerned. What's your thoughts on this? Well, let's do some more research and make sure before we do make this huge accusation that we're 100% clear. No, it was, he failed a drug test. Let's use him as an example to show everyone how we're hard on drugs. And as soon as I saw the first headline, growth hormone, my first thought was, that's odd. The NFL doesn't even test for HGH. I didn't realize that they had a reliable test to do that with. Well, they don't. The HGH test is you have to fast. You have to not drink any liquids for 12 hours. You have to be in a very relaxed state. because as soon as you start going out and being active, your body's own natural production of HGH goes through the roof. Well, when did they test him for this? 15 minutes after the fight. He's still bleeding in the back room. And to draw his blood, missed the vein 3 times. Blood shot across the room. And then he takes it back to the mom and pop drugstore where they test mostly for marijuana in teenagers. Nothing like steroids in athletes. And even after they send in these results, they destroy both samples, which by any organization knows you just don't do that. They didn't do it with Anderson Silva. They didn't do it with anybody else. And so after all of this, after being disrespected so badly, why would Cung want to go to that? Why would he?
Yeah.
And yet, can he quit? Because I hear that all the time. Well, if I don't like my boss, I just quit. We don't get that. We don't get the ability to quit. We have to retire. That's our only thing. Can you imagine? You're living your dream job. It's the best thing you've ever had. You love going to work. You wanted this your entire life, and then your boss just completely slanders you, berates the boss, changes all your working conditions, gives you a 90% pay cut, and yet you can't quit. All you can do is say, well, I guess I'm done. I'll never do my dream job again. I'm going to retire.
Huh.
Because the UFC has the fighters locked up in perpetuity. I have 1 fight left on my contract. I will never fight for the UFC again. I have no desire to. I don't like the way that they're treating the fighters and all that kind of stuff. Plus, I'm older, and Beat came to me and offered me $1 billion. I couldn't take it because that 1 fight continues on. And there's a lot of guys like that who just hate the UFC so much they would rather retire and go on to something else than lend their name to the UFC again.
Sure.
And you can see how many cards are out there where you don't know 3/4 of the guys on the card or 90% of the guys on the card.
Right.
Because the UFC doesn't value the athletes. They value the UFC name. And you can see that with the new, how big was the athlete's name compared to the Reebok and UFC logo?
Right.
So it's just a total joke. But that's been their motto all along is, we're about the UFC, we're not about the fighters. Well, how many guys tune into the UFC because Dana White said to? Didn't talk about any fights. He just came on there and said, we have a UFC coming up. You need to buy it. Best card ever. People would be like, well, who's on the card? You buy fights, you buy pay-per-views because of the fighters, not because Dana told you to. I think hopefully most of us are well beyond believing that this next fighter is the best fighter ever, and this card is the best fighter ever, because Dana says that about every card. It's time for guys to wise up and hopefully get things changed so the athletes can have better working conditions, better pay, which, guess what? They're going to invest in themselves. So they're going to put on better fights with these guys when they're taken care of. It's just that simple.
Well, this has been an eye-opener for me. This is a great conversation. Do you think, with this new sponsorship deal, how will that affect companies like Bellator and World Series of Fighting?
It'd be great for those guys, because now it used to be, you could, like I said before, you could have whatever sponsors you want. Yeah. So in my last fight, I made 5 years ago, I made around $45,000 in sponsorship dollars.
Wow.
I'm not a champion. I wasn't fighting for the title. I wasn't on a big pay-per-view card. I was, I think, the first fight of the night on a Spike card.
Okay.
So I wasn't even getting that much exposure, and especially, like I said, I wasn't a champion. And yet, here were all these businesses, and I had a worldwide group, for the most part, to choose from. Companies that wanted to associate themselves, their brand, with myself. And now, according to the Reebok UFC deal, if I was to fight that same fight then, my value would have been $5,000. I would have had a 90% pay cut from that. And what did I do with that money? I invested it in myself. I put together fight camps because even my low dive is $7,000. So now I'm going into pocket so I can fight for the UFC. And depending on how much money you're making, These new guys are getting $10,000 to show and $2,500 from Reebok. $12,500 to fight for the biggest fighting organization on the planet.
Huh.
And again, because the UFC doesn't care about the fighters, it just amazes me that they'll just wash through these guys. It's no longer, to me, it's not a cool thing to say, oh, I fought for the UFC.
Right.
It's not an exclusive club anymore. Fighting for the UFC is got to be the easiest big professional sport to get into. It's willing to fight for $12,500 on an undercard or on a fight pass card. Anybody. Wouldn't you rather see the same fighters knowing that they have a home, that they're going to be there year after year and they're compensated for?
Right.
And that now you get to know these fighters. You get to see who they are. Just something as simple as a 3-fight, no-cut contract over and over and over again. So every time a fighter signs that contract, they get to renegotiate every year. This year, I've got 3 fights. And with my minimum being, geez, why not raise it just a little bit? Instead of making $30,000 a year for those 3 fights, jump it up to $20,000 a fight or $30,000 a fight. When you're making billions of dollars, we know you can afford this. Letting these guys actually get their feet wet, letting them fight and fight hard, and knowing that they have a job. Because how many of us perform best when you know that at any given time your boss can cut you? You're done. Doesn't matter. Just don't like it for whatever performance. I've seen that over and over again. Guys having fight of the night performances to being cut because he has one lackluster performance. And where are his rights?
Yeah.
He just signed a big contract. The rights are only for the promoter. He's got you locked down, but you can't do anything to him. You have no rights whatsoever. And if you look at something like the Muhammad Ali Act, that stuff is just blatantly illegal. What would be wrong with having the fighters even negotiate one fight at a time? So you're title fighters, knowing if I win this fight, next fight coming, I'm going to be able to negotiate for even more money. If I lose the fight, man, that's going to be tough. It's going to make them think every single fight, I've got to be fighting. I've got to be fighting hard, as opposed to no cut contract or the champions clause. If you're the champion, you can't go anywhere. UFC has you locked down and just keeps renewing your contract over and over and over again. It doesn't work that way in any other sport, in any other industry.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time today, man. And is there anything you'd like to promote before we let you go, or throw out your social media?
The biggest thing I have going on right now is my comic book Zombie Cage Fighter. And it's the biographical horror story of my life. What I've been through, what I've seen and done as a fighter and as a father. And then I threw in zombies as the antagonist.
Nice.
Everybody that goes to zombiecagefighter.com, you can get a free PDF of the Issue 0 comic that I launched in 2012. Just this past weekend, I launched Issue 1 of the miniseries. It's going to tell the whole story. I don't have it available to the public as of yet, but that'll be coming later on in this year. And I hear a lot of times guys saying, how can I support fighters? This is one of those ways. Check out my shirts. Check out my comic. Like I said, I'm giving you that free PDF of the comic. I believe in the story. For me, it's fun, and the creative team that I've got around me has just been phenomenal. This is my story. It's 100% my intellectual property. It's something that I'm building. Incredible team around me, these artists and guys that have helped me actually write it out a little better than I could with my chicken scratching and all that kind of stuff. And my goal is just to see this brand and this story get bigger and bigger. And I've sponsored fighters in the past. I'd love to do that in the future. Obviously, not in UFC. I can't afford, well, it's not even a deal with Reebok anymore.
Right.
But I've sponsored Bellator fighters in the past. And my goal is to continue supporting the sport that gave me so much, and also trying to provide for the fans some gear that I think is cool and is unusual. It's not the usual, look at me, I'm a tough guy fighter type shit that Affliction and all those other brands have for all these years. With mine, I've got the cool horror look, the zombie look, the MMA look, and then also I've got the original TNC surf artist from Town and Country Surf from back in the 80s who made these amazing shirts with Thrilla Gorilla and Joe Cool and all this cool stuff on them. So for me, I'm having fun with it, and I'm going to comic book conventions all over the West Coast. I'm doing Ventura in August, Eugene, Oregon in November, and the Rose City Comic Con, Cherry City Comic Con. Like I said, I just did San Diego Comic Con. So it's a blast, man. I can't say it enough. I'm just amazed every day what an incredible life that I have, and all the opportunities I've been given. My goal is just to help make it so other fighters, other athletes have those opportunities too.
Good stuff, man. Well, thanks for your time, and let's talk again soon, because we really didn't get to cover everything I want to talk about in this half hour, but appreciate the time.
My pleasure, man. Once you get me started, I don't shut up, so you got to schedule me some time.
Hey, it's all good. It was awesome. Thanks again.
Cool, man.
Okay,
Awesome.
see ya.
My pleasure.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.